Good afternoon, everybody. Most welcome to our press conference tonight. I'm very happy to introduce Nika Gvaramia, a former political prisoner from Georgia, a former minister, political opposition figure, and indeed Nika is the one who wishes Georgia all the best and most importantly European future. As well, I am joined by Anna Fotyga, my great colleague from the European Parliament, as well as Miriam Lexman, another colleague, one more, Viola von Cramon is on her way, will join us in a minute time. Our today's press conference is mainly about the story of Nika Gvaramia, a man for whom we staged so many public events, been campaigning for his release from prison. I will remind you that he was convicted for 3.5 years. He spent over a year time in prison in Georgia. He was pardoned in the end of June this year. And in fact, this is a very first foreign visit for Nika Gvaramia, and it happened to be the European Parliament and European Union. So we welcome Nika most warmly back to freedom. You deserve this, and most importantly, he remains very much committed for his cause, for political cause, and I will invite him to speak about his experience and about his projections for Georgia in years to come. We will speak about today's situation in Georgia, political polarization, media freedoms, opposition situation, as well as we will touch upon situation of former President Mikhail Saakashvili. So I'm very happy to invite Nika Gvaramia to make his introductory remarks. After each and every of us will make a statement, around 3-4 minutes. You will be invited to present your questions and we will be happy to reply. Thank you. Nika.
Thank you very much for having me here and for your support you're providing for, first of all, for my country, which is the part of the Europe, cultural, historical, and geographic part of the Europe. So, and our aspiration is joining this, our historic family. And each and every obstacle in this way, I think, and we will eliminate at the end of the day. And I think that's earlier than later. So what's the regime? It's in Georgia. What's about regime in Georgia? So definitely we have some oligarchy regime, which is not about bad governance. It's not a matter of bad governance. It's a matter of autocracy of one and only oligarch, Bidzina Ivanishvili, and which means that the whole instrumental or whole toolkit of instruments of oligarchy is on place. And it's made by Russian scripts, according to Russian scripts, which is propaganda war, and war propaganda together, mixed somehow. So that's the main directions of propaganda, pre-electoral propaganda, and they actually started its pre-election period. That's engagement in the war by the West. It's a main narrative, and you know that we have some collective trauma, and war is touching this collective trauma is a very, painful for Georgians, and it provides terror. That's terrorizing Georgian people. The second is that's European value against Georgian traditions, such as LGBT, anti-religion, etc. And here we have this Polish map. Anna Fotyga, who is one of the closest friends of our country, and she knows that European Union is not against religion, because the Poland is much, devoted to the religion country as, for example, Georgia is, and nothing problematic with that. And we have some different things about LGBTQ is coming, which is, sold as a European interruption in Georgian values, which is also true, but this is main dimensions. Georgian Dream is trying to actually solve as the main problems with Europe, and the war is a blood and NATO is a war. That is, you know, some kind of equation they are making. But Georgian people actually, after all, they know what is Europe. They know who is our ally. They know who are our friends, and they, most importantly, know who has occupied our country. And therefore, Georgian people are in a different place, and Georgian government in a different place. That's why Georgian government lacks legitimacy. They are not actually answering the needs of Georgian people, and they are not expressing expressing the positions of Georgian people and aspirations of Georgian people. So what is important here, for me, what was important, I was not just actually telling you the stories of Georgian political prisoners or, you know, some assaults against journalists, political, critical people in Georgia, civil society, politicians, opposition politicians, etc., and most importantly, the third president of Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili, who is actually the architect of this current geopolitical place of Georgia, which is a main aim for Georgia to distract for current government. But what was important for me is how we together discussing what is the breakthrough this vicious cycle. And I think that's new people, new faces, newcomers in politics, from civil society, from the youth, which actually in last few months actually told us that they are the future of Georgia, and they have own communication language, and they could do everything for this country and this free generation not born in Soviet Union. So, and of course, this all of them mixed with politicians who are in place, who are working on the ground and working hard. I like Georgian politicians. Actually, they are in a very difficult situation, but I think that we together can overcome this regime. I am optimist in that, and from my point of view, Georgia will be European very soon, and Georgia will be different because we will elect in 2024, I'm pretty much sure, new government, pro-Western and effective and efficient. That is my vision. It's not my hope, just my hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Nika. May I invite Viola von Kramon to join us. Viola, we are waiting for you. You are an important person to take part in our event. Before I giving a word to Anna Fotiga, let me to quote a letter I received today from Georgi Vashadze, who is a chairperson of a political party strategy builder. He quotes, I quote his letter, "Instead of depolarization and fulfillment of 12 recommendations, Georgia Dream continues the physical and verbal assaults against all critically thinking persons, politicians, representatives of academia, journalists, and etc." So that's the state of play from today, from a quote from letter of Georgi Vashadze. I thank you for his assessment. It's important to receive those signals and to stay in touch with all political and civil society representatives in Georgia. Now floor goes to Anna Fotiga. Anna.
Thank you, Petras, and thank you, Nika. Actually, it is a day of joy, of course. It has always been. I feel kind of déjà vu. For decades already, I used to welcome political prisoners, some of them freed, and used to commemorate those perishing in this battle. We are happy because of happiness of Nika's family, his brave wife, Sofia, and his kids who campaigned all this time during his imprisonment and under absolutely fabricated accusations, allegations, and kept in prison such a long time. In documents of the European Parliament, there is mentioning of his case, both in major report that we voted with vast majority of European Parliament votes, as well as in resolutions. But of course, we are aware, being grateful for his presence and his courage and ability to continue actually his public work. It does not happen always, and in this case I really pay tribute to his courage, also to stand here now among us and being so outspoken. Yes, we are friends. All of us gathered here, we are friends of Georgia and Georgians, knowing that there is a rightful place for Georgia and Georgian people in the family of democratic countries of free world. And we hope for a genuine voice of Georgian people to prevail and to allow this country choose decisively the path to join all of us in this family. There are our hopes for Georgia. I would like to mention now, just in my last sentence, the dreadful, dire situation of Mikhail Sakashvili. Now, after information embargo removed, I know that Polish doctors were allowed to examine him, and I hope for his release for humanitarian reasons, to be cured in one of Western states that offered their services to tend to his very fragile and delicate health. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I invite Marianne to take the floor.
Thank you very much. I would maybe echo what has already been said. We are all friends of Georgia, and we are all happy that Nika can be among us today, and he was not broken in a prison, but that he is dedicated to help Georgia to be once democratic, free country, sovereign country in the European family of countries, which is so important in the complex geopolitical situation we are facing today. And we all support the European aspiration of Georgian people. But on the other hand, what we observe today in Georgia is deliberate polarization, is verbal attacks against journalists, random detentions of everyone who stands up and wants to say a word for the freedom of his or her country, growing surveillance, intimidation and physical attacks against journalists, spreading Russian disinformation, spreading disinformation which is polarizing the country and which is not based on truth. All this is not helping Georgian people to be once part of the European family where they deserve to be. We, as the European Union, have asked the Georgian government to act on 12 points which we believe are absolutely vital that Georgia will be once a democratic, prosperous country which is part of the European Union. And if the Georgian people would like to once see this future, it's very important to request that the government is moving on these 12 points. That's very important. We cannot do this homework here in Brussels. It needs to be done in Georgia, in Tbilisi, by the government. And I can stay here, that we here are ready to help and support the government in fulfilling these 12 points and give advice, give support once we see that there is willingness to act on this. And we see people like Nika, other people who are ready to help and give their advice, give their expertise and their two hands to roll up the sleeves and work together on the future of Georgia. And I will also finish saying that these 12 points are very important. One move is also absolutely vital, and is to release Mikhail Saakashvili on the humanitarian grounds, as it was requested by this parliament many times, and as it is stated by the law in his situation, that he should be released on the humanitarian ground and on the grounds of his health situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam. You're completely right. We are partners and good willing people towards Georgian people, and we wish all the best, and we are looking forward for our full-fledged cooperation as soon as possible. Now I invite dear Viola from Cremon to have her statement.
Yeah, thank you so much, Petras, and thanks to everyone who contributed. And we are very glad to finally see Nika Gvaramia released. Some of us gave up the hope, and then we realized there is a hope, and it's good that we saw, as Anna said, I mean, this unjustified imprisonment for over 3 years. We saw the suffering of the family, many other friends, and of course, media staff and so on. So that is brought, hopefully, to a good end, but that does not mean that Georgia is in a good track. And so, as Anna has said, we, the friends of Georgia, the friends of the Georgian people, had suffered quite a lot. And we continuously think about how to overcome this polarization and how we can also overcome this revanchism. Yeah? So it's not just about fixing one problem. We really would like to see this, the 12 recommendations, the 12 priorities set up by the European Commission, because it's not in our interest, it's in the interest of the Georgian people, it's in the interest of the Georgian society to have an independent judiciary, to have these justice reforms, to go for a de-oligarchization, and to have a fair and just access to many of the institutions which are laid out here. And I think this is what we are striking for. It's not about partisan supporting one party or the other, supporting one group or the other in the country. That's not what this is all about. It is really a sincere and a very honest interest in the country, in development in the country. We see there is a young, very ambitious generation in Georgia, and many of them asking me, is it worth to stay or should we rather leave? And some have taken already the decision. They have left the country, and I'm so sorry if I see this. When it was 10 years ago, people asked me, is there a country you would move to? I would say always it's Georgia. It is a country of dream and hope. And 10 years later, I'm not so sure whether I would bring this statement up again. I have my doubts, not because the country itself has changed, but the political environment, the climate has changed, and it's so hostile, it is so difficult. And I feel so sorry. I mean, it's not about me, it's not about us, but it's about the people there, and they deserve a different future. And they have to make sure they get the perspective the country originally had, and it was in a good hand, it was in a good direction, it was a role model for many other states, and now it looks in a complete different direction. And that's why we are fighting so hard together with people who are on the side of, let's say, democracy and rule of law, to make sure that the path Georgia Original has chosen can be brought back. So that is at least my intention. That's why I'm glad that we got one political prisoner out, but that is not the end of our fight. We have to fight for much more. You have mentioned the very unfortunate case of Mikhail Saakashvili, but that is just another one of many others. So let's stay together and try to find, and you have seen this, the resolutions from the European Parliament. There was a broad support, there was a broad majority. This is not a single group, not a single party, not a single MEP. Here's an overall majority in favor of a more democratic and a more rules-based development for Georgia. Thank you so much for coming and for showing interest.
Thank you all very much. And, you know, all those, my colleagues, are very dedicated for the cause of European Georgia. With this in mind, let me, colleagues, to inform you that today we sent a joint letter to President of Georgia, Speaker of the Parliament of Georgia, as well as Prime Minister of Georgia. 44 signatures. All major political groups of this House have signed up by the call to endorse the only compassionate, morally just and effective solution to transfer the former President Sakashvili to one of the EU member states where he can receive the necessary and appropriate medical care. While appreciating the visit and mission of the Polish doctors and medics, I think this transfer, as rightly mentioned by my colleagues, is the only and humanitarian solution in this regard. We can't see the pictures of Mikhail Saakashvili like this. I don't know how many days we can see it and when.
It can worsening, nothing better.
Exactly.
Is expected.
So it's not a humanistic approach to keep a former president of Georgia, of country, in conditions like this. The sooner, the better. And I really hope that our call will be heard and responded in a positive way. Now we have a chance for Q&A. Any questions might be taken. So that's why. Yes, go ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much. Natia Guksadze, TV Tavari, Georgia. Thank you this opportunity and good afternoon to everybody. It is a very good occasion, not only because it's a special day for us that Nika is free, but he's standing with you and he is ready to answer our questions in European Parliament building. It is very gratifying for us. But however, very dramatic things are happening in Vilnius, where the Prime Minister of Georgia was not even invited, as German media reports. It was a very crucially important summit for Georgia toward NATO integration and historic event, not only for Georgia, for the geopolitically, geopolitics, and but unfortunately, our Euro integration process is pretty unclear too. That is why, let me ask you, all of you, how do you see the future of Georgia? And what is important to do not to lose this historic chance for this moment, and how return the country to its Euro-Atlantic path? Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you on behalf of all of us for this question. Well, it is very difficult, first and foremost, to comment reports of media for us active in foreign affairs, also in the European Parliament. There are sources that we tend to rely on. My only comment, based on my knowledge, is that Mr. Garibashvili, Prime Minister of Georgia, during Munich Security Conference, mentioned rather negative attitude of his government vis-à-vis NATO. Actually, I know there is some difference in statement between the President of Georgia and Mr. Garibashvili, but eventual reaction, I'm not quite sure about. I wouldn't like to criticize media, but not much is still known about NATO summit. But generally speaking, if decision like this taken, it does not mean a future, negative future in terms of NATO accession for Georgia. It simply means that, well, in nearest future, with this kind of differences within Georgia, it's difficult to discuss things. In terms of European Union, we are pretty clear. All of us, we support Georgia's future, but much is also on Georgia's side. We would like to see prospect and progress in achievement of reforms on the side of Georgia. We are positive, and we think, as Nika Gvaramia told, that future of Georgian people, and we intend to help in this, is within the democratic family. But there are, of course, certain circumstances, not to speak about war of invasion of Russia into Ukraine. That's very important, and stance of Mr. Garibashvili's government on this is not so clear, while NATO keeps unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Miriam?
I'll only add that the citizens of Georgia have the keys to the transatlantic doors and to the doors of the European Union. And it's not being done only through the ballot once in a while during elections, but that needs to be done also on a daily basis through the pressure on the politicians to represent their views. First of all, the citizens decide on the politicians' views or stands while during the elections they claim, but if they deviate from this position, and we do see this deviation when it comes to the EU as well when it comes to the transatlantic integration, the citizens should request that the government returns to the path it promised to the citizens. And that's very important. This is how it works in democracy, and I still hope that in Georgia, the democracy is fragile, but it's still strong enough that the citizens are able to express their views and are able to express where they see Georgia in the future. And that's very important. And then, as I said, the EU, but as well as the transatlantic structures, will support Georgian people if the request is very clear. But since there are messages which are neglecting each other, then it's very, very difficult for the international societies to read where Georgia sees itself.
Without external support, it will be impossible.
But there is support.
These finances and resources, Russian oligarch, Russian propaganda, and it's really, really huge barrier and obstacle on this way.
First Nico and then Viola.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for a question. But I think that it's, first of all, it's up to Georgians how to change their country and retaining, I would say not retaining and get back to right path to West. I want to address the new generation. The new generation, which is not just Gen Z generation, but some people who are actually above the 25, 30, even more, which actually they was born in free Georgia, not the Soviet Union, as actually I am. So guys, come up with your ideas, come up with your bravery, come up with your strengths, come up with your Westernness, come up and fight for your country, for your country's Western future, for your personal future, for future of your parents, for future of your kids, for the future of your homelands. Homeland needs you. Everything is possible. There is huge resources in, already established political parties, but it's even more resources beyond that in civil society, in these newcomers, our youth, our new generation, politics needs you. Your country needs you. Without you, everything is impossible. With you, changes are very, very possible, and you can be very effective. You can change. Come up.
It's a call for young people, Viola,
Well,
as we are.
I mean, absolutely. The last demonstrations have shown that the young generation is ready to take over responsibility. I mean, maybe not in a political institution as one might ask them for, but they know what they don't want, and they don't want to go back to authoritarian regime, to any kind of an undemocratic Georgia. So I guess they will fight back in case there is an attempt to take completely over. They need to sort out in what kind of capacities they will become active in the future, that's for sure. But what we have seen is that the young generation, they will definitely try to do everything to prevent going to any form of autocracy. But I think what is needed for this is, and there is where the European Union, but also the international community has a role. We need to prevent that votes are being stolen, that there's fraud, manipulation in the next elections, and there's a huge danger that this will take place. We have seen some of the, let's say, extent and some of the dimension already during the last elections, but the more pressure, I would say, the ruling party will feel, the more they will try to manipulate and to put pressure on people in the Central Election Commission, but also on the District Election Commission to secure their votes and to even do more on this. So we know all the tricks, we know what they have on hand, and we may have to make sure we have a comprehensive, a very large election observation mission. They come early enough, and they are placed in all the regions of Georgia, not just in the capital and so on. This is something we can ask for. This is something we can deploy together with the External Action Service and other international institutions.
I think our press conference came to the end. Let me to welcome once again and appreciate all the efforts and actions and this commitment to continue political fight for European Georgia, Nika Gvaramia. I'm sure one day we will host Mikhail Sakashvili here in this house, and we will do everything possible to bring this day as close as possible. And let me to thank all of you for your interest, for your participation, and in particular Nika, Miriam, Anna, and Viola. Thank you, and let's fight for and continue our fight for democratic and European Georgia. Thank you.